Hello. So we've been talking about anxiety during lockdown. It's something that many of us will be feeling as we are here living through this pandemic. And when we look at people who aren't anxious, who are at ease with themselves, we find that they share a lot of beliefs, some core beliefs about themselves and about life in general. And if we want our children to have the same attitudes, we can start to foster those beliefs in them from a very early age. And you've probably been doing this unwittingly anyway. But this pandemic will have shaken some of those beliefs in the best of us. And so in this next very short series of 3 or 4 videos, I thought it would be useful to look at some of these beliefs, how they might have been shaken by the crisis, and what we can do to talk with our children about those beliefs and just encourage them to still think like that even while the crisis is going on, so that we can help them both get through this crisis and of course minimize the potential for any trauma thereafter. Now, the first of these beliefs is the belief that the world is a pretty safe place. Now that's a difficult one right now, isn't it? Because as we're all stuck at home or going out because we are key workers, with the news that's going on in the background, we probably don't feel like it's a very safe place at the moment. But the reality is that for the vast majority of us in the West, the world is a safe place to be. Leaving aside, for example, questions of the pandemic, we live in a place where we have sanitation, running water. Large advances in medical science mean that we are not susceptible to the sort of diseases that would have hurt our ancestors. Our access to a wide range of fruit and vegetables so that we can keep our immune system healthy. All of these things. Advances in manufacturing and workplace regulations mean that our workplaces, our schools are safer than ever before. And in the UK alone, for example, since 1995, the incidence of violence has dropped by over 50%. So we are in a far safer place than the vast majority of our ancestors have ever had to really deal with. And then, of course, there is the pandemic. Now, the word we hear about the pandemic all the time is that it is unprecedented. And really, that's something that we really should be bearing in mind. This is not the norm. Even if it feels that we have been stuck in lockdown for months or even years on end, this is actually a small moment in time and it will pass. And at some point, although not immediately, we will be able to get back to a level of normality where we can come and go as we please. And so we have to keep this crisis within that bandwidth, within that moment of time, and realise that it will pass and we will go back to feeling much, much safer in ourselves and a life that is freer and more at ease. Additionally, I'm not going to minimise the impact of this crisis. It's a very, very significant time in our lives. Lots of people are suffering and people are losing their lives. We also need to remember that the vast majority of people who contract this virus experience no symptoms whatsoever or mild to moderate symptoms. And of those that do then experience severe symptoms, only a fraction of them need to be hospitalised, and a percentage of those recover. So 50% of people who get to need a ventilator recover. Now, these figures are changing all the time, and we don't know how accurate all the data is. But what we can see is that for the vast majority of the population, their experience of the virus will be that either they have no symptoms or that they are mild, moderate, and that they will recover. And so if you find that your child is anxious about the state of the world and about the pandemic itself, it's worth just having these discussions to keep everything in perspective and help them to remember that even in the midst of this pandemic, the world is still a pretty safe place for them to be. No, it is not 100% safe, and it never has been, and it never will be, and that is something that we as humans have to deal with. But they need to know at their core, as we all do, that we can live our lives to the full without having to look over our shoulder all the time, even in the midst of this pandemic. And then, of course, you can go on to discuss what we'll be looking at next time, which is that even when life is challenging, we can cope with most things. So until next time, be safe, be well, and be kind.